Hi, welcome to tonight's reading from The Lost Horizon by James Hilton. We stopped at chapter 5 end, and tonight we start with the beginning of chapter 6. Conway and his companions gradually settled down and learned the life at Shangri-La. To pass the time, Miss Brinklow began to learn the Tibetan language, and Conway found much to interest him apart from the puzzling problem which he had set himself. During the warm, sunlit days, he made full use of the library and music room. He calculated that there must be between 20 and 30,000 books in the library, and Chan told him that there were other books published up to the middle of 1930 which had arrived at the monastery but which had not yet been added to the shelves. We keep ourselves fairly up to date, you see, he said. Some people would not agree with you, replied Conway with a smile. Quite a lot of things have happened in the world since last year, you know. Nothing, my dear sir, that will not be better understood in 1940, he replied. You know, Chan, I believe I am beginning to understand you, said Conway. Time means less to you than it does to most people. If I were in London, I wouldn't always be wanting to see the latest hour-old newspaper, and you at Shangri-La are not particularly anxious to see a year-old one. It seems to me quite a sensible attitude. By the way, how long is it since you last had visitors here? That, Mr. Conway, I am unfortunately unable to say. It was the usual ending to a conversation. But Conway was used to it now and did not find it annoying. He began to like Chan more and more, but it still puzzled him that he met so few of the people living in the monastery. Even if the lamas themselves were unapproachable, surely there were others like Chan. There was, of course, young Manchu girl, Lao Sen. He saw her sometimes when he visited the music room. But she knew no English, and he was unwilling to admit that he knew Chinese. He felt this knowledge might prove useful to him later if he kept it a secret now. He watched her playing her lovely music. It was impossible to know what was in her mind. It was even difficult to guess her age. He doubted if she was over 30 or under 13, and yet in some strange way, neither of these could be ruled out as quite impossible. There was a kind of agelessness about her. Mallinson, who sometimes came to listen to the music, found her very puzzling. I can't think what she's doing here, he said to Conway. More than once. Do you suppose she likes it? She doesn't appear to dislike it, Conway answered. She doesn't appear to have any feelings at all. She is more like an ivory doll than a human being. I wonder how old she is. After a pause, the young man added, and how old do you think Chan is? Anything between 49 and 149, Conway replied lightly. Meanwhile, Miss Brinklow seemed to enjoy her study of Tibetan. Meanwhile, also, Bernard continued to be unfailingly cheerful and good-tempered. His cheerfulness annoyed Mallinson, and he said so to Conway. Isn't it rather lucky for us that he has settled down so? Conway said. But Mallinson answered, I think it is strange. He is supposed to be a hard-headed businessman. You would think that this sort of quiet life would drive him mad. What do you know about him, Conway? Have you ever seen his passport? I probably did, but I don't remember, said Conway. Why? Just this, Bernard was traveling on a false passport. He isn't Bernard at all. Conway was interested, but not particularly worried. He liked Bernard, but he did not really care who he was. He said, well, who is he then? He is Chalmers Bryant. Is he? What makes you think so? He dropped a pocketbook this morning and Chang picked up and gave it to me, thinking it was mine. It was full of cuttings from newspapers and I couldn't help seeing some of them. They were all about Bryant and we searched for him, and one of them had a photograph which was just like Bernard. Conway looked thoughtful. Well, you may be right, he said slowly. It would explain his contentment here. He could hardly have found a better place to hide. What are you going to do about it? Mallinson asked. I can't see that I can do anything about it at the moment. Even if he is a criminal, we have got to live with him until we can all get away. I advise you to say nothing about your discovery. But the man's nothing but a thief, said Mallinson. I know plenty of people who have lost their money through him. Bryant had been at the head of a large group of firms in New York. Conway had not taken a great interest in the case, but he remembered that the Bryant group had failed and hundreds of people had lost all their money in the crash. Bryant was in some way responsible for the failure, and he had hastily left for Europe, taking all his money with him. The police of half a dozen countries were searching for him, but he had so far avoided discovery. Conway said at last, well, Mallinson, if you take my advice, you will say nothing about it. Not for his sake, but to save us from a very awkward situation. Please yourself, of course, but don't forget that he may not be the fellow at all. But he was, and he admitted it that evening after dinner. Chang had left them, and Miss Brinklow had turned to her Tibetan grammar. The three men sat in a rather unhappy silence. Conway realized that Mallinson was quite unable to treat the American as if nothing had happened, and it was equally clear that Bernard sensed that something had happened. Suddenly, the American threw away his cigarette and said, I guess you all know who I am. Mallinson said nothing. But Conway replied quietly, yes, I think we do. It was careless of me to leave those newspaper cuttings about, said Bernard. Well, you are very calm about it. There was another silence, broken at last by Miss Brinklow. I am sure I don't know who you are, Mr. Bernard, she said, although I guess you weren't traveling under your own name. They all looked at her in surprise, and she went on. I remember when Mr. Conway said our names would be in the papers, you said it didn't affect you. I thought then that Bernard probably wasn't your real name. Bernard gave a slow smile and he lighted another cigarette. Madam, he said, you are a very fine detective. Well, I am not sorry that you have found me out. You have all been very nice to me, and I don't want to make a lot of trouble. At the moment, we must help each other as much as we can, and I guess we can leave the future to settle itself. Conway looked at them with a good deal of admiration. It was a strange to think that this heavy, good-tempered, fatherly-looking man was one of the world's worst cheats and thieves. He looked far more like the headmaster of a boys' school. In answer to Bernard's last remark, he said, "Yes, that's the best thing to do, I am sure." Then Bernard laughed. It was rather exciting at first. He said, "The police chased me right across Europe. You know, they nearly got me at Vienna. But after a time I began to get nervous, so you can understand why I've been so contented here. It is nice and quiet for a change. No one can get you on the telephone." "I dare say they wish they could," said Conway dryly. "I must admit that I don't know much about what people call high finance." "High finance is mostly luck," the American answered. "I had more than my share of bad luck and lost all my money, that's all." "You also lost other people's money," said Mallinson sharply. "Yes, I did. And quite, because they all wanted more money and hadn't the brains to get it for themselves." "I don't agree. It was because they trusted you and thought their money was safe." "Well, it wasn't safe. It couldn't be. There isn't safety anywhere nowadays. I couldn't help the crash in the money market any more than you could help what happened after we left bus school," Bernard answered sharply. Before Mallinson could reply, Conway said hastily, "We better not argue. The important thing is that we are here and we must all help each other and make the best of it. It is strange, you know, that out of 4 people, 3 should really be finding some comfort in being here." "I hope you are not counting me," said Mallinson angrily. "No," Conway answered calmly. "I am counting Bernard, Miss Brinklow and myself. My own reason is perhaps the most simple. I just like being here." It was perfectly true. He liked being at Shangri-La. For some days, he had been gradually reaching a strange resolution to the problem of the monastery and its inhabitants. He felt that he had almost figured the final key to the mystery. Here at Shangri-La, everything was calm and peaceful. The stars shone brightly in a moonless sky, and the distant mountains showed faintly in a pale blue light. Conway suddenly realized that he would not be overjoyed if the porters from the outside world would change their plans and arrive immediately. His thoughts were interrupted by the silent arrival of the Chinaman. "Sir," began Chang, "I am proud to be the bearer of important news. The High Lama has sent for you."